Protests in Iran escalating with deadly clashes between demonstrators and security forces. Both protesters and security personnel reportedly killed, as authorities detained dozens. This is all driven by worsening economic conditions, currency devaluation, and soaring prices. The country's central bank governor resigning over this. President Trump warning the U.S. is prepared to intervene overnight, posting on Truth Social, quote, "America will come to their rescue if Iran violently cracks down on peaceful protesters." I want to bring in former State Department senior advisor and Center for the National Interest senior fellow Christian Whiton. Christian, I want to get your thoughts on this because the situation is deteriorating hour by hour in Iran.
Yeah, you could say deteriorating or improving. This is a lot of political pressure put on this Islamist regime that first came to power in 1979 by taking American diplomats hostage. It's a violent, ruthless regime. It drives problems not only in Iran, but in a number of countries around the Middle East and next door in Iraq. It also is the chief sponsor of the Houthis and of Hezbollah and of Hamas, uniting these different factions of political Islam in their hatred of Israel and the United States. So what we're seeing here actually serves U.S. national interest, and I think that's something that Donald Trump has recognized. It's really quite remarkable. He's against regime change conceptually, certainly against nation building. There's no talk of that, but the idea that we may actually put some additional pressure on this government to help the protesters, that's a huge difference from President Obama and President Biden, who both sat on their hands when protests like these sprung up during their presidencies.
No, and very strong words overnight from President Trump about this, about what he is seeing play out in Iran, and the president saying that, look, if this continues, that we will, as a nation, intervene. We saw that from the president overnight. I want to bring in Tiana Lodesher from Washington. She's got a question for you.
Historically speaking, we don't really like doing nation building in the Middle East because it's not like Afghanistan really wanted democracy. Iran might be a bit of a different situation. I'm wondering about those protesters on the ground. We're seeing viral videos on X and whatnot of, the Crown Prince, Reza Pahlavi's name being invoked. Is that real? Do you think these protesters on the ground have coalesced around with whom they would want to replace the Ayatollah if they were to be successful? And would that make President Trump's job a little easier in terms of not having to do nation building on his own?
It's a great question. What comes next? And that was always a concern. In Washington, particularly among the left, reporters from places like the Washington Post have demonized the Iranian opposition, which is known as the MEK. They don't want to bring back the Shah's dynasty necessarily. There are groups that probably would want that, but the idea of a modern republic, maybe there's some monarchists in the mix, maybe not. But unlike places like Afghanistan and Iraq, where really you just had sort of chaos, Libya is another one, there is at least the prospect of a well-organized political opposition that's pro-American that could step in, so it wouldn't have to involve the U.S. military, for example, to step in, take down this regime and hold elections. In Iran, it's never been a complete democracy. It went from a monarchy to this Islamist regime in 1979, but a much more modern society with some democratic traditions, perhaps, than Afghanistan, which had none of those things.
Yeah, no, and certainly Tiana makes a great point that we are treading carefully, but still peace through strength is what we hear from President Trump. I want to move on to what's happening with Russia, because Russia's Vladimir Putin and Ukraine's Zelensky delivered sharply contrasting New Year's addresses. Efforts are obviously intensifying to end this nearly 4-year-long war. Zelensky signaled a possible peace deal, said the agreement's 90% ready. Putin sounded more defiant in his address, and both sides are still striking each other with drones. This entire peace process, it's very fragile, Christian. Where do you think this goes?
It is. It's very hard to say. As the president has said, we may be 90 or 95% there, but that last 5 or 10% is tricky. The Ukrainians have come a long way from saying they wouldn't cede an inch of territory, including Crimea, which Putin regained for Russia, if you will, in 2014, had been part of the Russian Empire from 1783 onward. What Russia is not willing to accept is sort of de facto backdoor NATO membership for Ukraine, which is what Zelensky plainly wants. If he wants a security guarantee and if he wants European or U.S. forces involved, that's essentially the same thing as NATO membership. It might even be better than NATO-ship because it's a one-way thing. So Putin's not going to go for that. And the question is if Ukraine is willing to concede more and essentially turn itself into something like Austria, armed neutrality, but something that is clearly not part of NATO and doesn't involve training. And the Ukrainians so far seem unwilling to take that step. But, you know, they seem to be inching a little closer, both sides, in that direction.
But security guarantees, I mean, I know Zelensky originally wanted 50 years, and the United States is saying 15. Do you think that that's enough for Zelensky to move forward? Should it be?
I think it should be because the Ukrainians are losing the war. They can say, and you know, it's always one more thing they need. First it was the HIMARS, then it was the Patriots, then it's the M1s, then it was the F-16s, then it was the Patriots, then they wanted Tomahawks. Trump said no to that. The reality on the ground is Russia is grinding away, so I don't think time is on their side. And I do think that, you know, in the end, they just need to accept reality, which is they certainly shouldn't disarm, but they're not going to get everything they want.
Well, let me move over to China with you, because China's Xi Jinping is vowing to reunify China and Taiwan. He says the move is unstoppable. This was his New Year's Eve speech, and this is just one day after they conducted those military drills around the island. He's promoting this global role for Beijing. He's pressuring Taiwan and other nations to recognize one China. Taiwan's on high alert, and the president there says they're going to defend their sovereignty. And the U.S. still is asking China to exercise restraint, warning that those military drills are raising tensions. And this is Washington just approved this $11 billion arms package for Taiwan. And then also, to add one more layer to this of complication, is this upcoming summit between Xi Jinping and President Trump.
Right. Well, I think that summit's important because President Trump hasn't conceded a lot, but I think he's gone quite far to try and smooth relations with Xi Jinping and China after cranking up tariffs, which is a very good thing to do. And if you look at the military, we have been shifting, and this is something I think the administration wants to do more, is shift more emphasis away from Europe, where we have, for some reason, 80,000 troops, and from the Middle East to the Pacific, where our key interests are involved. So what China is doing looks a lot like a dress rehearsal for some sort of quarantine or blockade of Taiwan. So not a full D-Day style invasion or something where they kill an enormous amount of people with a missile and air attack on Taiwan, but they slowly try to strangle it. And then the question for this or any U.S. president is, are you willing to potentially go to war with China to break that blockade, to relieve Taiwan? If Xi Jinping wants a successful summit, he's going to have to start making some concessions to stop this dangerous activity, to release political prisoners like Jimmy Lai, which is something that President Trump has asked for. You know, it has to be a two-way street, but so far we're not seeing that from Beijing. So we're left with, frankly, having to build up our own military strength in the Pacific.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned Jimmy Lai. Maria's been doing extensive reporting on his condition, his health condition. It's really deteriorated, unfortunately. Christian, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for being here.